It's early November 1966 in Washington, D.C. Attorney Oscar Smith sits in his office in the Department of Justice, reading interview transcripts to prepare for an upcoming case. Smith is in charge of reviewing applications for draft deferment. It's his job to determine whether applicants claiming to be conscientious objectors are sincere in their beliefs or if they're just lying to get out of military service. Today, he's assessing the most controversial case that's ever crossed his desk, one involving heavyweight boxing champion Cassius Clay, or as he's now known, Muhammad Ali. Ali is claiming that he's a minister of the Nation of Islam, a religion that does not believe in war, and therefore he must be excused from military service under the 4D exemption for all religious ministers. Ali's claim has already been rejected once by the draft board in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. But Ali's lawyer appealed the case to a state draft board, which triggered a weeks-long investigation by the FBI and a formal hearing. Ali and his lawyers, along with several witnesses, went before a judge to testify about his beliefs, and in the end, the judge ruled he was in fact sincere and should not be drafted. But now the task of making a final determination comes down to Smith, and today's the day he has to decide. Smith hears a knock at his office door, sees a colleague poke his head in.
Hi, Oscar. Just wanted to see how you're doing with this Clay case. Are you ready to make a recommendation? Not really. But come in and sit down. Help me talk through this thing one last time. I'm surprised you're still on the fence. I was just reading the report from the judge, and he doesn't leave much room for doubt. As far as he's concerned, Clay, or Ali, I guess, is sincere. I know. But there's just something about this case that feels fishy to me. Ali never mentioned that he was a conscientious objector until after he faced the threat of being drafted. Now, all of a sudden, he's a minister? Seems odd. But he addressed that. He said the Nation of Islam is controversial and it would have cost him and his promoters a lot of money before the Sonny Liston fight. So money trumps his religious beliefs. I understand your hesitation, but the Nation of Islam does oppose war. Elijah Muhammad spent 4 years in prison during World War II for resisting the draft. That seems pretty sincere to me. But look at what Elijah Muhammad actually says. The Nation of Islam members cannot serve in the military of the United States, but he says they could serve in a holy war to defend Islam. That means they're not true conscientious objectors. You can't just oppose particular wars, you have to be against all war. Okay, but every witness for Ali said that he does oppose war. 3 dozen people. Sure, his friends and family members, they're biased in his favor, but they're not all on good terms with him. Ali's parents said they hate the Nation of Islam, and since he changed his name, they've barely spoken to him. But that doesn't mean they want him to go to war. Plus, I keep coming back to the fact that Ali has told reporters over and over again that he considers Vietnam a white man's war. It seems to me his objection is political, not religious, and the law is clear. You cannot dodge the draft for political reasons. And that's a fair point, but do you really want to contradict the judge's recommendation? It's non-binding, so I don't see why not. We've overruled judges in cases like this before. We've never had a case like this. Oscar, we're talking about one of the most famous athletes in the world here. If we go against the judge's recommendation and deny his deferment, people are going to get angry.
Smith shrugs.
We're not here to please people. We're here to uphold the law. Well, sounds like you made your decision. Yes, I think I have.
Smith's colleague gets up and leaves his office, still looking unconvinced. But Smith feels certain he's doing the right thing. Ali is an opportunist, looking for a way out of serving his country. He shouldn't receive special treatment just because he's a famous boxer. So Smith is going to recommend that the Louisville Draft Board deny Ali's request. Muhammad Ali is going to be eligible for the draft just like everyone else. From Wondery, I'm Lindsey Graham, and this is American Scandal. In the early 1960s, boxer Muhammad Ali rocketed to stardom by becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. But he courted controversy along the way, both with his flamboyant persona and his decision to join the Nation of Islam. Ali was first drawn to the nation's message of self-determination for black people, but he quickly embraced all of the nation's teachings and its rules. Ali began praying 5 times a day, abstaining from alcohol and pork, and declaring his opposition to war. In early 1966, Ali applied for a draft deferral as a conscientious objector and minister, but the government rejected his application. And when Ali in turn refused to be drafted, the justice system decided to pursue a criminal case against Ali to the full extent of the law. This is episode 2, What's My Name? It's December 28, 1966 in New York City. Sports reporter Howard Cosell is standing in the press room at Madison Square Garden holding a microphone looking down the lens of a TV camera. He smiles, glancing up at the 2 giant men on either side of him, Muhammad Ali and another African-American boxer, Ernie Terrell. Both men, well over 6 feet tall, are set to fight in a highly anticipated heavyweight title match, and Cosell has brought them together for an interview ahead of the bout. To help sell the conflict between the 2 fighters, Cosell starts the interview with a jab at Ali. As the camera starts rolling, Cosell announces that Terrell has just told him that he's the only man in the world that Muhammad Ali is afraid of. Knowing Ali has a response, Cosell asks him to read a poem he's prepared just for the occasion. Ali recites the poem in his Kentucky drawl, carefully enunciating rhyming couplets like, "At the sound of the bell, Terrell will catch hell." He gets a few laughs from others in the room, but Terrell remains stone-faced. And then he takes a dig of his own, saying he'd like to say something about his opponent, Cassius Clay. Cosell glances over at Ali and can see anger cloud his face. Ali quickly interrupts Terrell and demands to know why he's refusing to use his real name. Terrell responds by reminding the champ that they've known each other for years and he doesn't remember him going by Muhammad Ali in the past. Ali is incensed. He insists that Terrell call him by his Muslim name, but Terrell refuses. As the argument escalates, Cosell tilts his microphone back and forth, trying to catch every word, knowing this is great television. The 2 boxers are squaring off as if they're already in the ring. But then when Ali calls Terrell an Uncle Tom, Cosell can sense the energy in the room change. Ali might have crossed a line with this insult. Cosell tries to wrap things up as Terrell steps in closer, looking as if he's about to hit Ali. But then Ali reaches past Cosell and shoves Terrell. Cosell barely escapes from between the 2 boxers as the room erupts in chaos. Ali and Terrell's entourages dart forward to grab the men who keep taunting each other. Cosell gestures at the camera crew to keep rolling, but at the same time he's unnerved. Tension in the boxing world over Ali and his antics is already high, and this little scuffle, ignited by his Muslim name, will only ratchet things up even more. Ali's bout with Ernie Terrell occurs 2 months later, in February 1967. Terrell lasts about 15 rounds, but he's clearly outmatched. By the 8th round, Ali is toying with him, taunting him with shouts of, "What's my name?" In the end, Terrell loses the match in a unanimous decision. Commentators say that Ali looks unstoppable in the ring. Even those who might despise his politics or behavior are forced to admit that he's the best boxer alive. And Ali is inclined to agree. He is faster, stronger, and more agile than ever. He's also continuing to stick to Nation of Islam tenets and has hired an all-black team of managers headed by Herbert Muhammad, the son of Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad. In many ways, Ali feels like he's reaching the peak of his abilities, which makes him all the more anxious that he might be drafted into the U.S. military. The war in Vietnam is ramping up, and the Army is recruiting heavily. So in early 1967, when the Louisville Draft Board decides to take the Department of Justice's recommendation and deny Ali's request for a deferral, the boxer is shaken deeply. Ali is now officially eligible for the draft, and his lawyer, Hayden Covington, immediately fights back. Covington files a lawsuit in federal court to declare Kentucky's draft boards unconstitutional because there's only one black draft board member in the entire state. He argues that just like juries, draft boards need to be reflective of their communities, which means they must be more racially diverse. But federal cases can take years to resolve, and Ali doesn't have that kind of time. Every morning, he wakes up wondering whether he'll be called to serve, and on March 15, 1967, he is. That evening, Ali is inside a suite at Madison Square Garden eating dinner after an intense training session for his next big fight, when he hears a knock at the door. Ali looks up from his meal to see the Garden's publicity manager, John Condon, enter the room. Condon approaches Ali and shakes his hand, but has a solemn look on his face. Then he places a hand on Ali's shoulder and says he has some bad news. He just got a phone call from Louisville. The draft board has released the next round of draftees, and Ali's name is on the list. He's going to be inducted in a month on April 11th. Ali's heart sinks. He always knew there was a chance of being drafted, but he hoped somehow he'd be spared. So Ali stands and starts pacing the room, his mind going through all the possible scenarios if he refuses to join. Finally, he looks at Condon and says that whatever happens, this next bout will probably be his last. And if that's true, he needs to make the most of it. A week later, Ali easily dispatches his opponent in a 7-round knockout. But news of the fight is overshadowed with speculation about Ali's impending induction into the Army. Ali has been saying for years that he'll never join the military, but most observers don't believe it. There's no way he'd throw away his boxing career by defying the government. So Ali's best hope is his legal case, and his lawyers are already hard at work. Covington knows the suit claiming that draft boards are racially biased could take years to resolve, so he tries another gambit. Since Ali has been living in Houston, Texas, nearly full-time for a few years now, Covington files a motion to transfer Ali's induction from Louisville to Houston, hoping that military red tape will delay the process. But the ploy doesn't do much. The military only expedites Ali's case and grant the transfer. Soon, the boxer receives a letter instructing him to report for induction in Houston on April 28, 1967, only 17 days after his initial induction date. And when the time comes, Ali wakes up that day feeling resolved. He's already decided that he's not going to serve. Still, the thought of having to subject himself to induction makes him nervous, and he's not the only one who feels that way. For U.S. Army Lieutenant Stephen Dunkley, he faces the day with dread too. Dunkley is one of the officers charged with overseeing Ali's induction, and while he doesn't want to force the boxer to join the military against his will, the thought of sending him to prison for refusing feels even worse. So as the hour of Ali's arrival approaches, Dunkley hopes that the boxer will just change his mind. He watches from a third-floor window as Ali's cab pulls up outside the U.S. Custom House in downtown Houston, which houses the Armed Forces Induction Center. The car is immediately surrounded by a mob of reporters, protesters, and counter-protesters. But Ali looks perfectly calm as he steps out of the cab and heads for the door, ignoring the reporters shouting questions at him. Anxiously, Dunkley heads to the lobby and counts the draftees gathered there. All 36 have shown up, so he begins to lead them back to an exam room to start the induction. Over the next 4 hours, Dunkley and other officers lead the men through a series of medical evaluations. They fill out paperwork and get their blood drawn. Then after lunch, it's time for the moment Dunkley has been dreading. Dunkley leads 8 men, including Muhammad Ali, into a small room and instructs them to stand in a straight line. Then he grabs a clipboard with a sheet of paper and clears his throat.
Gentlemen, as your name is called, please take 1 step forward. Taking this step constitutes your agreement to be inducted into the service announced following your name. Jason Adams, Army. John McCullough, Army. Wayne Neal, Army. Cassius Clay, Army.
Ali doesn't move. Dunkley knows Ali hates people calling him by his former name, so he tries again.
Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali. Please step forward for induction into the Armed Forces of the United States.
But Ali remains still. Dunkley steps forward.
Mr. Ali, I hope you understand the gravity of the situation. I do, sir. It's my duty to inform you that if you refuse induction, You face a penalty of up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. I understand, and I face a court-martial if I don't do my job. That's okay. It's the system that's the problem, not you. I'm going to give you one more chance. Muhammad Ali, please step forward.
Again, Ali refuses to budge.
Mr. Ali, you will need to put your refusal to serve in writing. After that, you are free to leave. But the matter will then move to the courts. I understand.
Dunkley curses to himself. He has no choice but to do his duty. So he turns to the other 7 men and tells them to head out to the door to his right, where they will board a bus for basic training. After they leave, Dunkley drops his eyes and heads to another door. In the hallway there, he nods at a government lawyer. The man nods back and enters to talk to Ali. Dunkley remains in the hallway, rubbing his temples. Thanks to him, it's now official. Muhammad Ali will be criminally charged with dodging the draft. Just minutes after refusing to be drafted, Muhammad Ali and his lawyers walk into a press room in the U.S. Customs House in downtown Houston. The room is swarming with reporters, all eager to ask Ali about his decision. But to the reporters' disappointment, the highly quotable Ali declines to answer any questions. Instead, he hands out a pre-written statement. It reads in part, "Many newspapers have given the American public the impression that I have only 2 alternatives in taking this stand. Either I go to jail or go to the army. There is another alternative, and that alternative is justice." Within hours of the press conference, the powerful New York Athletic Commission revokes Ali's boxing license and strips him of his heavyweight title. Several other states follow, effectively banning Ali from boxing in the country. 10 days later, Ali is indicted by a federal grand jury. He's formally arrested and fingerprinted. His mugshot is taken, and then he's released on bail, sent home to await trial. Ali feels certain he's doing the right thing, even as many people in his inner circle try to convince him to back down and just join the military. They're worried he's not thinking clearly or that he may not fully understand what going to jail could do to his career and public image. But Ali has his share of supporters, too, and none of them are more loyal to him than his friend and business associate, former NFL football star Jim Brown. Since first meeting in 1964, Brown and Ali have bonded over their shared status as elite athletes and their interest in black activism. Brown has also become a partner in Ali's career through his company Main Bout, which handles the television rights for Ali's fights. And at first, when Ali was drafted, Brown felt like he was in a no-win situation. Either Ali would have to stop boxing while he performed his military service, or he would be banned from boxing for refusing to serve. No matter the outcome, Ali would be unable to box, and Brown's company would lose millions in TV rights. But then Brown gets word of another possible solution from an unlikely source. He receives a phone call from Herbert Muhammad, who is also a partner in Main Bout, as well as Ali's manager and the son of his spiritual mentor, Elijah Muhammad. Herbert tells Brown that he's gotten word from a U.S. district attorney that if Ali agrees to serve, he'll be allowed to continue boxing professionally. He'll never see combat, and the Nation of Islam wants him to take the deal. This all comes as a shock to Brown, but he agrees to discuss it with Ali. Still, Brown isn't comfortable telling his friend to do anything that goes against his beliefs. Instead, he decides to organize a meeting of other prominent black athletes, including several who have served in the military themselves. He wants them to act as a kind of advisory council to Ali, to help him weigh the pros and cons of taking a deal and entering the military. So on June 4th, 1967, a group of black NFL players and basketball stars gather in Brown's office in Cleveland, Ohio. But even in a room of top athletes, Brown is struck by how dominant Ali's personality is. No one can match his charisma. Ali cracks jokes and works the room like a politician, shaking every hand. And only when Ali is settled does Brown open up the floor to discussion. One of the athletes, an Army veteran, speaks up first. He says Ali should enlist and notes that it's extremely unlikely that he'll end up on the front lines. He reminds Ali of what happened with former heavyweight champ Joe Louis, who enlisted during World War II. Lewis spent most of his time giving boxing exhibitions for the troops, and Ali will likely do the same. But Ali looks dubious. Brown chimes in and says he has good reason to believe that Ali can cut a deal to keep boxing professionally while he serves. The Army has hinted that it would grant him permission. Brown also points out that Ali's fights would support Brown's production company, Main Bout, which employs many black workers. Brown would also use the proceeds to bankroll his latest venture, a support organization for black entrepreneurs. All Ali has to do is cut a deal with the Army, and he can continue his boxing career and funnel millions of dollars into black communities. But wrapping up his pitch, Brown says he'll support whatever decision Ali makes, and he sees the other men in the room nodding their heads as well. Ali leans back in his chair, contemplating everything, but then he shakes his head. The answer is still no. He will not serve in the military. His religious convictions won't allow it. Hearing this, several of the athletes try to reason with him, saying that there's more to a man than just religion. There's his country, too. And Ali acknowledges this, but says it's not the right path for him. Trying a different tack, one athlete asks Ali point blank if he's willing to walk away from all the money, not just for him, but for his black management team and Brown's production company. Ali stands and looks at every man in the room. He says he's sorry, sincerely apologetic, but he can't do it. His decision is bigger than the war in Vietnam. It's about the treatment of black people all across America. He says he would never be in this position if the Draft Board and Department of Justice had treated him fairly. The broader issue is one of a broken criminal justice system in America, and as Brown looks around the room, he can see that what Ali's saying resonates with the other athletes. A few of them ask Ali about the Nation of Islam's stand against integration, worrying that this might lead to an American apartheid. But Ali says he's confident that black men and women can make do for themselves. And then for the next several hours, the men continue going back and forth about the plight of black people in America. By the end, Ali has won over every athlete in the room. They're all convinced that he has thought this through and that for him, resisting the draft is the right thing to do. Brown leaves the meeting feeling disappointed. Because if Ali can't box, Brown's company stands to lose a lot of money. But he's also fearful for the sake of his friend and the continued backlash he'll face for taking this stand. He's sacrificing so much just to stand by his principles. On June 19, 1967, Ali enters a Houston courtroom to begin his criminal trial for draft evasion. And immediately, it seems like the cards are stacked against him. The presiding judge is Joe Ingram, a 63-year-old World War II veteran with a reputation for being strict and conservative, and the jury is all white. The government's case is simple. According to the law, Ali has a duty to serve, but Ali refused that duty and therefore must be found guilty. But Ali's lawyer, Hayden Covington, raises a host of issues. He complains about the racial makeup of the draft board and the fact that the Department of Justice rejected the recommendations of the judge who first reviewed Ali's case. Even the FBI report on Ali concluded that he was sincere in his beliefs. Covington also notes that the draft board faced undue pressure to force Ali into service. A congressman from South Carolina had publicly threatened an investigation if Ali was ruled exempt. But Judge Ingram proves unsympathetic to these arguments. He expresses skepticism about Ali's claims of being a minister and seems to think that Ali's objections to the war are political, not religious. The trial lasts only 2 days, and Ali's defense team decides against having him testify on his own behalf. After closing arguments, the jury deliberates for just 21 minutes before deciding to convict. When the word guilty rings out, Ali sits at the defense table stunned. He feels his lawyer, Covington, pat his shoulder and assure him they'll appeal the verdict, but it's not much comfort to Ali. He can't believe things have reached this point. Ali is even more shocked when Judge Ingram ignores the prosecution's recommendation for a reduced sentence. Instead, he announces that he's giving the boxer the maximum sentence allowed by law, a $10,000 fine and 5 years in federal prison. Ali will be allowed to remain free while he appeals his sentence, but until then, Ingram orders that Ali surrender his passport so he can't flee the country. Hearing this sentence, Covington jumps up and objects. Even the prosecutor looks stunned, but Ingram bangs his gavel and refuses to hear the objection. A few weeks later, On July 7th, Ali and his lawyers are back in Judge Ingram's court again, filing a motion to permit Ali to leave the U.S. for a boxing match in Japan. Since Ali has been banned from boxing in America, fighting overseas is his only chance to earn money. And at this hearing, Ali gets a chance to testify. As he steps into the witness box, he's looking forward to speak in his own defense. And initially, everything seems to be going well. One of Ali's defense attorneys asks the questions they've rehearsed, and he gets to assure the court that he's traveling overseas purely for professional reasons. Then, after a brief recess, it's the prosecution's turn to question Ali. U.S. Attorney Mort Sussman rises and gives a tight-lipped smile.
Mr. Clay, the newspapers reported recently that you attended a so-called peace rally in California. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I was invited to speak.
And isn't it true that while you were at that rally, you signed the draft cards of some of the students?
Yes, sir.
Is it true that they subsequently burned the draft cards?
No, sir, I did not see that.
But didn't you encourage them to do it in your speech?
No, sir, I didn't encourage anyone to burn anything.
I can't understand why you went to this peace rally and signed draft cards if it was not for the purpose of encouraging those people to avoid the draft.
I was invited to say a few words, and that's all. I didn't talk about war or anything like that. I just talked about boxing.
You are personally opposed to the war in Vietnam, correct?
Not only Vietnam, but any war.
Didn't you say that you would fight if there were holy wars?
No, sir. I just meant that the Holy Quran teaches that we fight in wars declared by Almighty God or a prophet of God. But I'm sure there will be no holy wars around here.
Is there any country you would be willing to fight for besides the United States?
No, sir. I have no reason to fight for any other country.
Not even a Muslim country?
Sir?
You don't have a greater loyalty to Muslim countries than you do to the United States?
I'm loyal to my people here in America. My people who are struggling for freedom, justice, and equality. I'm not a citizen of no other country than America.
When Sussman finishes his questions, Ali steps down from the witness stand. He feels like he advocated for himself well and did everything he could to convince Judge Ingram that he's not a flight risk. But as he returns to the defense table, studies the judge's stern face, and feels his throat tighten. Something tells him that no matter what he says, Ingram has already made up his mind not to let Ali leave the country. And if that's true, Ali won't just be giving up his freedom, he'll also be flat broke. In August 1967, Judge Joe Ingram issues his decision on Muhammad Ali's motion for permission to travel to Japan for a boxing match. Citing Ali's participation in anti-war activities, he rejects the request and orders the court to seize Ali's passport. This is disastrous news for Ali. Now he can't box at home or abroad, and he's furious at both the judge and his lawyers who should have prevented this from happening. After returning to the courthouse to surrender his passport, Ali's lawyer, Hayden Covington, asks to have a private meeting with his client. Ali thinks it's a good idea because their strategy clearly isn't working. He follows Covington from the court into a nearby conference room. There, they both get settled at a table. But instead of discussing their case like Ali wants, Covington starts by opening his leather briefcase and removing a sheet of paper. He hands it to Ali.
What in the world is this?
A bill for my expenses.
I thought we were going to discuss my case.
We can discuss that as well, but I'd like to chat about the bill first.
It's nearly $300,000.
Lawyers are expensive, especially good ones. The Nation of Islam wanted the best for you.
We've lost every single case and hearing so far.
I know it's upsetting, but this was expected.
You expected this?
We were never going to win in the lower courts. In those cases, juries are tasked with looking at narrow issues. Did someone violate a law or not? It's cut and dry. It's at the appeals level where you'll win. Those judges can examine more substantial issues like racial bias. I know it's frustrating, but we're just now getting to the stages that favor you.
And when were you going to tell me all this? That you expected to lose?
I didn't think you needed to know.
It's my case and you're blowing it. We never should have said I was a minister. That was a mistake from the beginning, and now they won't take us seriously. You can't even stop them from stealing my passport.
I admit I'm upset about the passport mess. We had a strong argument, but sometimes you just get a hostile judge.
That's just another excuse. You always have an excuse, and I'm tired of it. You're fired.
What?
I'm firing you.
Mohammed, slow down. The Nation of Islam recommended me. You can't just ignore their advice.
I can do whatever I want.
If you fire me, I'm suing you for those expenses.
Go right ahead.
Ali rises and storms out of the conference room, leaving Covington stewing in silence. But as soon as he reaches the hallway, Ali finds a gaggle of reporters staring at him. He realizes they were eavesdropping the whole time, and this makes him even more angry. But Ali knows any outburst will only make things worse, so he bites his tongue, ignoring their gazes, and heads straight outside. After firing Hayden Covington, Ali names Chauncey Eskridge as his new attorney. Eskridge was a decorated pilot in World War II. He's one of the most prominent black lawyers in the nation. Although primarily a tax attorney, he's done work on Ali's case already, including testifying before the Kentucky judge, and he immediately takes responsibility for the appeal in federal courts. But although Ali feels better with Eskridge in charge of the case, after filing the appeal, the 25-year-old boxer doesn't know what to do with himself. He's one of the most famous people in the country, but he can't earn money boxing, and it could be more than a year before his case is even heard. Ali retreats inward, looking for peace and stability in his life. He proposes to Belinda Boyd, a 17-year-old woman whose parents are prominent members of the Nation of Islam. And they are a happy newlywed couple, but plagued by financial troubles. Belinda is even forced to dip into her college savings to pay for groceries. Still, they have reason to feel hopeful. By 1968, public opinion about the Vietnam War has begun to shift. As American casualties mount and anti-war protests grow, President Lyndon Johnson announces that he will not seek re-election. The war's become a quagmire and effectively driven him from office. This shift in the public's attitude about the war is met by a change in attitudes about Ali. Young people inspired by Ali begin burning their draft cards, chanting, "Hell no, we won't go" at protest rallies. But the courts don't share the feelings of the young public. In May 1968, a 3-judge panel on the Fifth Court of Appeals upholds Ali's conviction, leaving him with just one more chance to clear his name by appealing his case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And at first, the court agrees to hear Ali's case. But in March 1969, the court announces that it's remanding Ali's case to the lowest branch of the federal system for more hearings. This decision surprises both the public and Ali. But what they don't know is that behind the scenes, something important has recently come to light. For the past decade, the FBI has been illegally wiretapping dozens of prominent Americans, including Elijah Muhammad and Martin Luther King Jr. 5 of the illegally recorded conversations involve Ali. In no instance was Ali the primary target of the wiretaps, but the Supreme Court rules that doesn't matter. Because of the wiretaps, the Department of Justice had access to information that Ali's lawyers did not, potentially violating his civil rights. So the Supreme Court wants a lower court to determine what role, if any, the wiretaps played in denying Ali's conscientious objector request. Ali is overjoyed at the news. Kicking his case back to the lower courts means he'll have several more chances to get his draft deferral, which would also overturn his conviction. So Ali starts feeling optimistic about the future, and he publicly floats the idea of a possible return to boxing. At a press conference with sports reporter Howard Cosell, Ali also admits that he has a lot of debt to pay off and that a heavyweight bout would help with that. But Ali's feelings about the future take an abrupt turn when in March 1969, he's suddenly summoned to meet with Elijah Muhammad at his Chicago home. When Ali arrives at his mentor's mansion, he opens the door to find a dozen high-ranking members of the Nation of Islam sitting around a table in the parlor. At the head of the table sits 72-year-old Elijah Muhammad himself. Normally, Muhammad has a wide, radiant smile, but not today. Instead, he points to an empty chair at the end of the table and curtly tells Ali to sit. Ali obeys, and Muhammad begins speaking. He tells Ali that the nation has always granted him independence to pursue professional opportunities, and Ali nods in agreement. He knows that other nation members have sometimes been forced to give up their careers in singing and other fields that were considered at odds with the nation's tenets. But Ali has always received special treatment in that regard. Muhammad continues, noting that the nation has indulged Ali outside the boxing ring as well. He mentions that 2 years ago, Ali met with Martin Luther King Jr. without the nation's permission and faced no punishment then. Ali nods again, knowing it's true. Muhammad then asks Ali, given the special treatment he's received, why has he so flagrantly betrayed the nation's teachings? Ali sits back, confused. He racks his brain trying to remember a misstep but can't think of anything. He doesn't think he's betrayed the nation's teachings. In fact, he thinks he's risked his career for the sake of the nation. Noting Ali's confusion, Muhammad shakes his head sadly. Then he says he saw Ali's recent interview with Howard Cosell, where Ali said he needed to fight again to make money. Ali admits he said that. He has a wife and child now, and legal fees to pay. Muhammad leans forward and says to Ali that the nation teaches that Allah alone provides, and that by going on television and saying he had no other way to make money, Ali effectively admitted he had no faith. Ali sits back in his chair, baffled. He thinks about Muhammad Speaks, the newspaper with the cartoon that first drew him to the Nation of Islam, which is now constantly celebrating his achievements with gushing stories. He also thinks about the fact that he fired his original promoters from Louisville so that Muhammad's son Herbert could manage his career. Both Herbert and the nation have made plenty of money off Ali as a result. Ali glances at Herbert, who's seated at the far end of the table, but Herbert ducks his eyes, looking embarrassed. Elijah Muhammad then rises from his chair and announces that he's suspending Ali from the nation for a full year. Ali is stunned. It seems harsh to suspend him just for saying he needs to earn a living, and Ali wonders if there's another unstated reason for this punishment. But Muhammad says there will be no further discussion of the matter. The boxer made a fool of the nation, and there must be repercussions. Then he announces that for 1 year, no other member of the Nation of Islam is allowed to interact with Ali, and if they do, they'll be suspended as well. He also says that Ali is not to be allowed to enter any nation mosque, and that members of the nation will refer to him exclusively by his birth name, Cassius Clay. Elijah then turns to Ali with a thin smile and asks, "Do you have any questions, Cassius?" Hearing that name on his mentor's lips stabs Ali in the heart. He scans the room looking for comfort, but no one says anything. Ali feels every bit as bereft as when he was sentenced to prison, but there's nothing he can do. The nation teaches that followers must submit to authority, and he has to submit now, however unjust it seems. As he gets up to leave, Ali is flooded with grief. He's sacrificed so much for the nation, not just boxing and career opportunities, but old friendships and the close bond he once had with his parents. He's even risking prison time to uphold the nation's teachings and refuse military service. But now, when he needs them most, the nation is abandoning him. So if he wants to keep fighting, in the ring or in the courts, he's going to have to do it on his own. From Wondery, this is episode 2 of Muhammad Ali versus the Draft for American Scandal. In our next episode, as Ali's career remains in limbo and his personal life unravels, his case makes its way back to the Supreme Court for one final decision that will determine his fate. If you'd like to learn more about Ali's fight against the draft, we recommend the books Sting Like a Bee by Lee Montville and Ali, A Life by Jonathan Eig. This episode contains reenactments and dramatized details. And while in most cases we can't know exactly what was said, all our dramatizations are based on historical research. American Scandal is hosted, edited, and executive produced by me, Lindsey Graham, for Airship. Audio editing by Christian Paraga. Sound design by Gabriel Gould. Music by Lindsey Graham. Voice acting by Ace Anderson. This episode is written by Sam Keane, edited by Emma Cortland. Fact-checking by Alyssa Jung Perry. Produced by John Reed. Managing producer Joe Florentino. Senior producers Andy Beckerman and Andy Herman. Development by Stephanie Jens. Executive producers are Jenny Lauer-Beckman, Marshall Louie, and Aaron O'Flaherty for Wondery.